Late autumn, 1887. Dead Juniper, New Mexico territory. The wind moved like a razor through the empty street, skimming dust off shuttered windows and the cracked sign of the dancing coyote. Jonah Creed swung down from his paint horse to water it. Another mile of bad luck wrapped in a coat. He meant to keep his head low, trade a handful of cartridges for coffee, then ride on with the moon. Then the girl stepped from the darkness. She was young, but not fragile. High cheekbones smudged with dirt, a stubborn mouth set against fear. A rope lay at her feet like a dead snake. She lifted her chin. "I'm May," she said. "May Albright. If you leave me here, they'll ship me to Abilene come morning." Jonah's hand stilled on the canteen. "Who said so?" "Silas Pike," she answered, and the name turned the wind colder. "He ain't a man so much as a debt with boots. Says my uncle's note came due. Says a woman can be collateral, the same as a mule." Jonah knew that name. Pike's gang ran freight, flesh, and rumor along the rails, a boil the law never lanced. May's wrists were raw. Her eyes were raw. "You picked the wrong man," Jonah said. "I'm nobody's savior." She looked past him to his horse. The road, the slice of stars. "I don't need a savior. I need a door." Bootsteps scratched on plankwood. Two shadows leaned from the coyote's back porch. Pistols easy. "There's our dove," one called. Boss said, "Keep her pretty." Jonah set his body between May and the porch. "Evening," he said, quiet as a prayer before trouble. "Little late for errands. Little late for strays." The taller man grinned. Jonah's right hand hovered near the worn butt of his Colt. But he didn't draw. Not yet. He saw how May's breath came shallow. He saw the future if he kept walking. It would look exactly like the last one, someone softer than the world getting ground down till there was nothing left but silence. "Name's Creed," the short one muttered, blinking slow. "Ain't he wanted?" The taller whistled. "Poster said 500 if breathing, double if not." May's fingers brushed Jonah's coat sleeve. Not a plea. A nudge. A door. The choice felt like an old coin, heavy in his palm. He flipped it without looking and caught it with his life. "Tell Pike," Jonah said. The sails canceled. He moved before their smirks could harden. Colt clearing leather, a single shot shattering the lamp beside them. Night roared in. May kicked the rope aside and ran for the alley. Jonah's horse screamed and pulled. He grabbed May's hand and they were motion. Two hearts choosing speed over permission. Behind them, men shouted. Boots hammered wood. And somewhere a fiddle stopped mid-note like a cut throat into the dark. The desert opened like a book written in blood and moonlight. Jonah Creed urged his paint horse hard, May clinging behind him, her breath sharp against his back. Each hoofbeat wrote louder the truth he'd tried to outrun. Once you draw steel, there's no turning a page clean again. They didn't stop until the town lights dwindled to a flicker and the night swallowed dead Juniper whole. Jonah swung down at a dry wash, gravel crunching under his boots. May slid off after, staggering but refusing his hand. She straightened like a soldier, though her wrists still bore the ghost of rope. "They'll follow," she said. "That they will." He checked the horse's cinch, buying silence. "And you'll leave me?" Jonah finally met her eyes. In them he saw not a girl, but a fuse burning low, stubborn fire fighting the dark. "You wanted a door. Well, miss, doors swing both ways. What you do past it is yours alone." May's chin lifted. "If I go back, Pike wins. And he'll sell me to men who won't let me speak my own name again." The words cut. Jonah pulled his hat lower. "And if you ride with me, you wear my bounty on your shoulders. Creed's name is curse enough in these parts. Better cursed and breathing than silent and sold." A coyote wailed in the distance, thin and ragged, as if to second her vow. Jonah studied her longer than he should have. The desert had a way of stripping people, bare no walls, no fancy words, just marrow. What he saw in May was dangerous. Hope sharp enough to wound. "Fine," he muttered. "But know this, by sunrise, your face will be wanted same as mine. Pike won't forgive what happened back there." "Ate quickly and kept preachers." May stepped closer, fierce in the starlight. Then I'll be wanted alive, not delivered like cattle. The honesty made his chest ache. He turned, tugged his coat tighter, and scanned the horizon. Already dust rose faint against the moon, too straight for wind. Riders. They're coming, Jonah said. May stiffened. What now? Jonah holstered the Colt and grabbed her arm, not rough, not gentle, just certain. Now we run crooked. They drove the horse down the wash, skirting sage and boulders, cutting where no wagon could follow. But every bend echoed pursuit shouts, hooves, laughter that promised cruelty. Pike's men were in no rush. They hunted like wolves, savoring the chase. At a dry bluff, Jonah pulled rein. We can't outrun them straight. Have to make them think we vanished. May glanced at the rocks above. You mean climb? He almost smiled. You said you weren't fragile. With grit and scraped palms they hauled themselves and the horse up narrow switchbacks, breath ragged, stones skittering into the dark. At the top, Jonah flattened them against rock, waiting. Below, torches bobbed through the wash like fireflies of hell. Voices cursed, then scattered. May pressed close, trembling not from cold but from the weight of choice. Jonah whispered, You're mine now, whether you like it or not. Both of us sold at sunrise. Her reply was quiet steel. Then let's make it till morning. Dawn cracked over the desert like a pistol shot, pale light spilling across red rock and the skeletal brush that clawed at the earth. Jonah hadn't slept. He'd kept his back to stone and his Colt across his lap, eyes following shadows that never quite became men. May had dozed against the saddle, but when the sun touched her face, she stirred with a wince. We're alive, she whispered, as though testing the miracle aloud. Jonah rose, joints stiff, scanning the horizon. No dust trails yet, but silence was a liar in the west. Alive don't mean safe. May pushed herself upright. Her dress was torn at the hem, her hair loose from the pins that once kept it neat. Still, she held herself with stubborn dignity. You said doors swing both ways. I walk through yours. Now where does it lead? Jonah tied down the bedroll, not looking at her. North. Santa Fe Trail if we can make it. Plenty of Law between there and Pike. Law ain't fond of me, but it might keep him busy. Why's the Law after you? She asked. What did you do? The question was a blade he hadn't wanted to touch. He cinched the pack tight before answering. Depends on who you ask. Some'll say I shot a marshal in Yuma. Some'll say I robbed the Atchison train. Her gaze lingered. And the truth? He met her eyes then, something old and broken flickering in his. The truth don't matter much when folks want you hanged. May swallowed but didn't look away. I'll take the truth anyway. Jonah breathed through his teeth. The marshal he drew first. My brother never walked away from it. The train? That was Pike's doing. He laid it on me to cover his tracks. Been wearing his crime like a brand ever since. The silence that followed was heavier than any night watch. May shifted closer, her expression softer now. Not pitying but steady. Then, we're both sold on lies. Jonah almost laughed. Almost. Girl, lies run this whole territory. They mounted, riding out over flats, where the sky pressed low and merciless. The sun rose hotter, baking truth and doubt alike, until the land seemed to shimmer with ghosts. By noon they reached a burned-out homestead, timbers black, chimney a charred finger pointing nowhere. May slid down, eyes wet. This was someone's life. Jonah dismounted slow, scanning the ground. No fresh tracks, no graves marked, just ruin. He touched the scorched frame. Pike's work. He torches what he can't take. May's voice trembled, but her words cut sharp. Then we don't just run, we stop him. Jonah turned, startled by the steel in her tone. Stop, Pike. Girl, he runs 50 men and half the sheriffs. You and me, we're dust to him. May knelt, brushing soot from a broken toy horse half buried in ash. She set her jaw. Dust can choke a man if the wind's strong enough. Jonah studied her in silence, the weight of her resolve settling into his bones. Against his will, something inside him shifted, not hope, not yet, but the faint memory of it. You're trouble, he muttered. So are you, she answered. And for the first time since dead Juniper, Jonah Creed almost smiled. By evening they were riding along the Devil's Spine, a jagged ridge that cut the desert in two, like God himself had dragged a knife through the land. Wind screamed through the gullies, carrying dust and secrets. May clung to the saddle horn, her knuckles white, but she didn't complain. Jonah kept them moving, though his instincts prickled. The land felt watched. When the trail narrowed to a knife edge, Jonah dismounted and led the horse by the reins. "Best to walk it," he said. "One slip, and we're bones." May slid down, boots crunching on gravel. She glanced at the drop, a sheer fall into shadow, dotted with boulders like gravestones. "Bones don't scare me," she said, though her voice wavered. Jonah glanced back at her, something like admiration tugging the edge of his mouth. "Reckon you've earned that fearlessness." They walked in silence until hoofbeats rolled behind them, faint but sure. Jonah stiffened. May caught it too. Her breath quickened. "Pike?" she whispered. Jonah tugged the horse forward faster. Could be worse. The trail widened into a saddle of stone. He pulled May against the bluff, hand pressing her shoulder firm. "Stay low." Through the dust came three riders, silhouettes jagged against the dying sun. They weren't Pike's men. No torches, no drunken laughter. These rode disciplined, rifles slung neat, eyes sharp. When the lead rider halted, the others fanned like clockwork. "Lawmen," Jonah cursed under his breath. The marshal's star gleamed faintly on the man's vest. "Jonah Creed," he called, voice carrying easy. "You're a hard man to track." May's gaze darted to Jonah. "What now?" He loosened his colt, but didn't raise it. "Depends if they want me breathing." The marshal nudged his horse closer, studying May with a hawk's eye. "And who's this?" May stepped forward before Jonah could stop her. "I'm not his hostage. I'm here by choice." The marshal's brows rose. "Choice? Riding with a man marked for murder? Better than being sold at sunrise," she snapped, surprising even herself. The men muttered, trading glances. Jonah felt pride swell sharp in his chest. And fear, too. Pride got people killed. The marshal dismounted, boots grinding on stone. "Listen, son. You come quiet. Maybe a judge gives you mercy. Keep running. You'll hang before the month's out." Jonah kept his voice calm. "You're wasting time. Pike's your problem, not me. He'll burn another ranch by week's end, while you polish your badge." The marshal's jaw tightened. "Maybe so. But Pike ain't standing here with a bounty. You are." May caught Jonah's sleeve, whispering fierce, "Don't give up. He's blind to Pike." Jonah's hand twitched near his colt. The marshal's men watched like coiled snakes. One wrong breath and blood would salt the Devil's Spine. Then a rifle cracked, not theirs. Rock exploded inches from the marshal's boot. Shouts echoed across the ridge. From the cliffs above, Pike's riders poured fire. Chaos ripped the air. The marshal dove for cover. Jonah seized May's hand and yanked her toward the narrow trail. Bullets screamed against stone. The horse reared, and dust turned to smoke. May gasped, eyes wide with terror and defiance both. "What now?" Jonah grinned darkly, Colt flashing. "Now, girl, we let the devils fight each other." The ridge became a battlefield in an instant. Gunfire rattled like hail on tin, echoing through the gulches. Jonah shoved May against a boulder, shielding her with his body as bullets chipped stone above their heads. "Stay down," he barked. "I'm not made of glass," she shot back, but her hands trembled against the rock. Below them, the marshal's men scrambled for cover, returning fire uphill. Pike's riders owned the heights, spitting lead with drunken precision. Dust rose thick, choking the air, turning the sunset to blood. Jonah's paint horse screamed, bolting down the trail in terror, saddle empty. Jonah cursed low. "There goes our door out of hell." May touched his arm. "Then we make another." Her voice carried a steadiness that startled him. He glanced at her face smudged, eyes fierce, not fragile, not broken. Something in his chest twisted. He grabbed her hand. "Run when I say. Don't stop. Not for me, not for anyone." She gritted her teeth. "I'll run, but not without you." Bullets sparked against stone. Jonah drew his Colt, sighted high, and fired twice into the cliffs. One rider toppled, screaming, cartwheeling into the gulch below. The chaos bought them seconds. Jonah yanked May to her feet. Now. They sprinted along the ridge, bodies low. Shouts erupted behind them. Lawmen cursing, outlaws laughing, more rifles cracking. The whole desert seemed to roar. The trail forked. One way led down toward the marshals, the other curved deeper into the spine's labyrinth. Jonah chose the crooked path, dragging May with him. They stumbled through jagged stone, hearts hammering louder than the gunfire. When they reached a shallow cave, Jonah pulled her inside. The air reeked of bat dung and old rain, but it was shelter. Outside, the battle still burned, distant now. May collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. We'll be trapped. Jonah leaned against the stone, reloading with shaking hands. Better trapped than riddled. Silence stretched between them, filled only by gunfire's echo. May's gaze lingered on him. You could have left me. Back there. You had the chance. Jonah holstered his Colt, met her eyes in the dim light. Could have, he admitted. Didn't want to. Her breath caught, not from fear. Something deeper passed between them, raw as the desert wind. She whispered, "Why?" Jonah stared at his scarred hands. Memories clawed at him, his brother falling, Pike's lies, nights of running until he forgot what he'd lost. He looked at her then, and the answer came rough. Because you're the first thing in years that ain't Ash. May's throat tightened. Her hand brushed his sleeve, tentative, brave. Then don't turn to Ash yourself. Before he could answer, hoofbeats thundered near the cave. Voices rose, Pike's men sweeping the ridge. Shadows cut across the cave mouth. Jonah's eyes went cold steel. He cocked the Colt, whispering, "Stay behind me." May lifted a jagged stone from the floor. Her jaw set. Not this time. Outside, the outlaws drew closer, their laughter crawling like snakes into the dark. And in that cave, outlaw and runaway waited together, the weight of the whole frontier, pressing on the thin line between survival and surrender. The cave's shadows twisted with every flicker of torchlight outside. May gripped her stone like it was a weapon forged in desperation, while Jonah stood in front of her, Colt steady, body taut as a drawn bow. The outlaw's laughter seeped in. "She in there, Creed?" one voice mocked. "Boss says she's bought and paid. You just keeping her warm for him?" May flinched. But Jonah didn't move. His voice came low, calm. "Pike don't own what breathes free. In this to a mite in planet, she's already his," the outlaw jeered. "Contract signed. Girl was collateral. At sunrise, she's sold. Best hand her over before we burn you out." May's stomach twisted. The words were lawless, yet sharp enough to cut. Sold. As if she were grain or cattle. She pressed herself harder to the stone wall, but her voice rose clear, fierce. "I am not for sale." Silence fell outside, heavy as an axe raised high. Then boots scuffed, and a rifle butt slammed against the cave mouth. Jonah fired. The blast lit the cave in a burst of fire and smoke. A body hit the ground outside with a wet thud. Shouts followed, rough and panicked. Shots cracked back, rocks splintering inches from May's head. She ducked, heart pounding. Jonah pressed closer, shielding her. "We can't hold them here." "Then what?" she gasped. His eyes burned in the gloom. "We break through. Sunrise ain't theirs to decide." Another outlaw lunged at the cave mouth. Jonah dropped him with a single shot, then grabbed May's wrist, yanking her into the open. The dawn was bleeding across the horizon, red and merciless. Gunfire erupted from the ridge as Pike's men closed in, shadows darting like wolves. May ran, skirts ripping on rock, lungs raw. Jonah fired over her shoulder, each shot buying heartbeats. A bullet grazed his arm. He hissed but didn't falter. Ahead lay a dry gulch, steep but narrow enough for cover. "Down there," he barked. They scrambled into the gulch, rocks biting their palms. May stumbled, nearly falling, but Jonah caught her, hauling her against him. Their eyes locked, breath ragged, the world closing in. For an instant, it wasn't fear between them, but something hotter, undeniable. Then Pike's voice rolled from above, smooth and venomous. "Jonah Creed, you stealing from me now? That girl's mine. Paper says so. Sunrise seals it." Jonah tilted his head back, teeth bared. "You think a signature makes you a man? Come down and take her yourself. Pike laughed, dark and sure. No need. I'll bleed you till you beg me to. May shivered, fury and dread tangling. She shouted up, "You'll never own me!" The response was a gunshot, dirt exploding inches from her feet. Jonah shoved her deeper into the gulch, shielding her with his body. "You hear that, Creed?" Pike taunted. "At sunrise I collect. One way or another." The sky brightened, cruel and relentless. And May understood. The outlaw meant to brand her future in blood. But Jonah Creed wasn't done fighting. Not for her, not yet. The sun lifted over the desert rim, striking the rocks with a glare sharp as knives. May crouched in the gulch, chest heaving, while Jonah reloaded with steady hands. Each click of brass against steel was a promise. They were not finished. Above, Pike's riders lined the ridge, black silhouettes against the fire-colored sky. Their laughter carried like vultures circling carrion. Pike himself rode to the edge, a black hat shadowing eyes full of hunger and arrogance. "You can't crawl forever, Creed," he called. "The girl's mine by paper and by power. Ain't no lawman nor outlaw gonna change that." Jonah cupped his hands, shouting back, "Paper don't bind a soul, Pike. You only own what's weak enough to bow." Pike's grin was cold. "Then she'll bow or she'll break. Either way, she ain't yours." The smite from the clasp, May's fists clenched, fury sparking hot in her veins. She pushed up from the rocks, voice shaking but strong. "I belong to no man." The echo of her defiance startled even Jonah. For an instant Pike's grin faltered. Then he barked an order, and gunfire rained down. Stone exploded, shards slicing May's cheek. Jonah pulled her against him, shielding her with his body as bullets screamed. Dust choked the gulch. Their odds were dying with every breath. Jonah's mind raced. They needed higher ground, needed to vanish like smoke. He spotted a crack in the gulch wall, narrow but climbable. "There," he said, pointing. "We get up that chute, they'll lose sight." May followed his gaze, eyes widening. The chute was near vertical. "We'll never make it." "We don't. We're dead." He holstered his Colt, grabbed her waist, and shoved her upward. She scrambled, clawing at roots and stone, skirts tearing, knees bleeding. Behind her, Jonah fired wild, keeping Pike's men ducking. "Climb, May. Don't stop." She climbed. Each scrape of stone against her palms was a brand, each heave a rebellion. Jonah followed close, bullets ricocheting inches from his boots. Twice May slipped, and both times his hand caught her, rough and certain. At last they hauled themselves over the rim, gasping. The desert spread wide, endless scrub and shadow. Pike's men shouted below, struggling to follow. Jonah seized May's hand, pulling her into a sprint across the flats. "Keep moving. Don't think." But May thought of every word Pike had hissed, of every rope burn, of every breath stolen by fear. And with each step, she shed another chain. They didn't stop until they reached a dry arroyo. Jonah dropped to one knee, chest heaving. Blood seeped from his arm, darker than the dawn. May knelt beside him, tearing her sleeve to bind it. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. "You saved me again." Jonah caught her wrist, his eyes fierce, even through pain. "No, you saved yourself. I just bought you time." Her throat tightened. She pressed the cloth firm, fighting tears. "Then let's buy each other enough to live." For a heartbeat, their faces were close, breath mingling. The desert hushed. Then a horn blasted from the distance, Pike rallying his pack. The hunt was far from over. The horn's cry rolled across the desert, answered by the thunder of hooves. May's heart seized, but Jonah was already pulling her to her feet, his bloodied sleeve ignored. "We move," he said, voice clipped. "Now." They stumbled through mesquite and stone, the land rising into jagged walls. Soon the world narrowed into a canyon throat, shadows deep and blue even under the rising sun. The air carried a strange hum, every sound repeating itself, boots scuffing, hearts pounding, echoes tumbling back like ghosts. "They'll corner us," May whispered. Jonah scanned the cliffs. "Not if the land swallows us first." They pressed deeper, until the canyon opened into a hollow ringed with rock spires. Here the echoes grew strange, bouncing wild, voices folding on themselves. Jonah led the horse beneath an overhang and drew May close. "Listen," he said. He clapped his hands once. The sound ricocheted, splintering into a dozen false directions. "Sound tricks the ear. We can use it." May understood. "Make them hear ghosts instead of us." Jonah gave her the faintest smile, though his eyes burned with exhaustion. Sharp girl. They set to work kicking loose stones down one path, slapping the canyon wall in another, their echoes scattering like broken glass. When hoofbeats closed in, the riders' shouts grew confused, chasing phantoms. From the shadows, Jonah and May crouched close, so close May could feel the heat of him, smell the dust and gunpowder on his coat. She whispered, "They'll kill you for me." Jonah's jaw tightened. "They'll kill me anyway. Difference is, I chose this." Her chest clenched. "Why?" His eyes met hers, fierce and unflinching. "Because for once in my cursed life, I want something worth dying for." The words knocked the breath from her. She searched his face, the scar along his cheek, the stubborn fire in his eyes. No pity lived there, no chains, just truth, raw and dangerous. Her hand lifted before she could stop it, brushing his jaw. "Then live for it instead." For a moment the canyon seemed to hush, even the echoes holding their breath. Jonah leaned closer, foreheads nearly touching, when a rifle cracked overhead. Stone rained down, snapping the spell. May yelped, Jonah pulling her against the wall as Pike's riders poured into the canyon mouth. Their torches flared, their shouts echoing wrong, bouncing wild. Confusion broke their line. Jonah seized the chance. "Go!" he hissed, dragging May through a narrow slit in the rocks. They squeezed into darkness, scraping skin raw, until the passage spat them out into a hidden basin, ringed in thorn and silence. They collapsed, gasping. May clutched his arm, feeling the warm seep of blood through her binding. "You can't keep bleeding and fighting." Jonah managed a grim smile. "Been doing it my whole life." But May's grip tightened. Not alone anymore. Above, Pike's curses rattled the canyon, hunting shadows. But in the basin below, for the first time since dead Juniper, Jonah Creed and May Albright felt the faintest stir of hope. By the second nightfall, Jonah's wounds burned like hot iron. May guided the paint horse while he swayed in the saddle, pale but stubborn, every breath drawn like a debt. The desert gave way to lights on the horizon, a town, ragged but alive, nestled along the Santa Fe Trail. May's chest lifted. "Shelter," she whispered. Jonah's eyes stayed wary. "Or a cage. Pike's men'll follow the same trail." But his body was near collapse. She led him into town anyway, past shuttered windows and the lone lantern of a saloon swaying in the wind. They stopped at the livery, where an old stable hand blinked at them with tobacco-stained teeth. "Creed," the man rasped, spitting to the dirt. "Words out. Marshall wants you hanged. Pike wants you gutted. You're worth more dead than breathing." May stepped between them, chin high. "And what are we worth alive?" The man's gaze softened at her fire. He jerked his head toward the saloon. "Sheriff drinks there. If you want to say in your fate, best speak quick." Jonah slid from the saddle, knees buckling. May caught him, her strength surprising even herself. Together they crossed the dusty street and pushed through the saloon doors. Inside, piano music faltered. Eyes turned, cards stilled. At the bar stood Sheriff Calloway, badge crooked, whiskey glass sweating in his hand. "Well, I'll be," he drawled. "Jonah Creed in my town, and with a lady no less." Jonah's voice was rough. "Calloway, you want Pike, not me. He's the fire burning this territory." The sheriff chuckled, setting down his glass. "And yet, it's your face on the posters. Dead or alive, Creed. Makes no difference to my purse." May's voice cut through the haze. "Pike deals in flesh. He tried to sell me like cattle. And you'll let him keep carving his empire while you chase the wrong man?" The room shifted, murmurs rising, gamblers exchanging looks. Even outlaws respected a woman who spoke like that. Calloway scowled. "What's it to me if Pike sells one girl?" May's fury blazed. "Because if he can sell one, he can sell 10. And if he can sell 10, he'll sell the whole damn town. Jonah swayed, his hand gripping the bar for balance. She's right. Pike's no outlaw. He's a plague. You stop him now, or he owns every soul on this trail. Before the sheriff could answer, the saloon doors crashed open. Pike himself strode in, flanked by riders. His smile was a viper's coil. "Evening, folks," he purred. "I've come for what's mine." May froze, her breath catching. Jonah shifted, forcing himself upright, hand resting on his Colt, though his vision blurred. "She ain't yours," Jonah said, voice steel wrapped in pain. Pike's grin widened. "Then we'll let the town decide. Sunrise duel. Winner takes her fate, loser feeds the dirt." Gasps rippled through the room. May's pulse thundered. Jonah's eyes never left Pike's. "Sunrise it is," he said. The night dragged long and merciless. Jonah sat at the edge of the livery, hat tipped low, Colt resting across his lap. His arm throbbed, the bandage stiff with blood. May knelt beside him, wrapping fresh cloth, torn from her dress. "You can't face him like this," she whispered. Jonah's eyes, shadowed by brim and pain, found hers. "If I don't, Pike owns you. I won't let that stand." May's throat tightened. "And if he kills you, then I'm still lost, only worse, because you'll be gone." He caught her wrist gently, rough fingers warm despite the night. "You asked me why, back in the canyon. Why I stay, why I fight. This is why. You're worth it." Her breath caught like fire in her chest. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to his hand on hers, to the truth in his eyes. Then hoofbeats echoed, distant Pike's men prowling the streets, spreading whispers of the duel to come. By dawn, the whole town gathered. The street stretched long and silent, dust curling in the pale light. Faces peered from saloon balconies. Children clutched mothers' skirts. Men tightened their grips on rifles. This wasn't law. It was spectacle. Pike stepped from the crowd first, all black coat and smugness, revolver gleaming on his hip. He tipped his hat toward May. "Morning, sweetheart. Hope you dressed for a wedding or a funeral, 'cause either way, it's yours." May's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Her hand trembled only when Jonah limped from the livery, coat hanging loose, eyes dark and certain. The crowd hushed. Sheriff Calloway raised a hand. "Duel at first bell. No interference." "It's some..." The church bell tolled once, its iron cry slicing the dawn. Jonah and Pike faced each other in the center of the street, 20 paces apart. Dust swirled between them like restless spirits. Pike sneered. "You're half dead already, Creed. Make it easy. Drop the gun and give me the girl." Jonah's voice carried steady. "Come, take her." The second toll rang. Hands hovered. Time stretched thin, the whole world holding its breath. May's nails dug into her palms till they bled. The third toll. Steel flashed. 2 shots cracked at once. Thunder splitting the morning. Smoke clouded the street. Gasps rose. When the haze cleared, Pike staggered, clutching his chest. His revolver clattered to the dirt. His eyes locked on May with venom, then on Jonah with disbelief. Before he toppled face first into the dust. Silence. Then a murmur, rising to cheers. Pike's riders bolted, leaderless, scattering like jackals robbed of their kill. Jonah swayed. The crowd's roar blurred to silence in May's ears. She rushed forward, catching him as his knees buckled. Blood trickled from his side, fresh and dark. "Jonah, stay with me," she pleaded, tears streaking her cheeks. "Please, you promised." His hand brushed her face, rough and tender. His smile was faint but real. "I keep my word." And then his eyes fluttered shut. May clutched him to her chest, the whole town watching, the dawn breaking red as spilled blood. For one terrible moment, May thought he was gone. Jonah's weight in her arms was heavy as stone, his breath shallow, lips pale. The crowd pressed close, their cheers dying to whispers. Sheriff Calloway shoved through, grim-faced. "He needs a doctor," May cried, voice sharp as a whip. The sheriff nodded once, signaling to 2 townsfolk. Together they carried Jonah into the saloon, laying him on a table cleared of cards and whiskey. A doctor, roused from sleep, pushed through with his satchel, muttering curses as he set to work. May never left Jonah's side. She held his hand through the long hours as the doctor stitched and bound, as fever raged, as Jonah drifted in and out of shadows. Each time his eyes fluttered, she whispered steady promises into his ear. "You're not alone. You won't ride into the dark without me." By the second night, his fever broke. Dawn poured gold across his face, softer than she'd ever seen it. He stirred, eyes opening to find her there. "You stayed," he rasped. Her tears turned to a smile. "I told you don't turn to ash. You're more than fire, Jonah. You're the reason I still believe in tomorrow." He tried to laugh, but it came as a groan. "Tomorrow, huh? Guess we'll have to build it then." Days later, the town buried Pike outside the ridge. No prayers spoken. His men never returned. For the first time in months, dead Juniper breathed without fear. Calloway approached Jonah, hat in hand. "Reckon you're no saint, Creed," he said. "But you saved this town from worse. I'll see to it the posters come down. Consider your debt paid." Jonah only nodded, but May caught the faintest crack of relief in his eyes. When Jonah could walk again, they left dead Juniper together. Not running now, not hunted, just riding. Days bled into weeks until they found a stretch of land where the grass bent gentle in the wind, a creek whispered steady, and the mountains kept watch. May stood on that soil, her skirts brushing the wildflowers, her son's toy horse clutched in her hand. She turned to Jonah. "Here," she said. "This is where I stopped running." Jonah looked at her, at the fire still in her gaze, the scars and strength both written in her. He dismounted, pulled off his hat, and pressed it to his chest. "Then here's where I stopped too." Together they raised a cabin, rough beams, split logs, calloused hands building not just walls but a promise. Nights they sat by the fire, sharing silence that wasn't empty. Days, Jonah taught her to shoot straight. May taught him to dream again. When spring came, the prairie bloomed. Jonah carved a cradle from pine, hands steady, eyes softer than the man who once rode alone. May planted flowers by the porch, her laughter carrying on the breeze. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the land, Jonah drew her close. "Guess we weren't sold at sunrise after all," he murmured. May smiled, resting her head against his chest. "No, we bought our freedom with grit and fire." The wind swept over the cabin, carrying not fear, but promise. For the first time, both outlaw and runaway had something worth keeping, a home.